A Fox News alert. We are awaiting a press conference this hour after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband was violently assaulted in their San Francisco home. He is hospitalized and the suspect is in custody. The Speaker's spokesman said the assailant used a hammer in the attack, leaving Paul Pelosi with blunt force injuries. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Emily Campagno, and here with me today, Jackie DeAngelis, Amy Freeze, Tomi Lahren, and joining us for the first time, Jake Beckett. Welcome to you all. Now we begin with Jonathan Hunt in Los Angeles with the latest on this developing story. Jonathan.
Emily, we are getting disturbing details of this attack on the 82-year-old husband of Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Paul Pelosi was apparently beaten with a hammer in the attack. He suffered blunt force trauma to his head and body, and we are told that he is currently in the hospital, but is fortunately expected to make a full recovery. We're also told, rather disturbingly, that the Pelosi house was specifically targeted in this attack. That information coming to the Associated Press from their sources. The FBI, U.S. Capitol Police, are now assisting the San Francisco Police Department. Now, we first heard about this in a statement from Drew Hamill, who is spokesman for Speaker Pelosi. He said, quote, "Early this morning, an assailant broke into the Pelosi residence in San Francisco and violently assaulted Mr. Pelosi. The assailant is in custody and the motivation for the attack is under investigation. Mr. Pelosi was taken to the hospital where he is receiving excellent medical care and is expected to make a full recovery." Now, Speaker Pelosi was not there at that house at the time. She was, we understand, in Washington, D.C. The big question is motivation. We may get some answers on that in a press conference with the San Francisco Police Department due in just about 30 minutes. Obviously, this could have been an opportunistic crime, somebody targeting that house because he thought the Pelosi's was away and could therefore burglarize it, or more disturbingly, it could have been politically motivated. We have seen previous political protests outside the Pelosi's house in San Francisco. It is well known, there is no secret that the Speaker lives there and owns that house. There were protests there in July 2020, as you see there, and graffiti was daubed on the house on New Year's Day 2021. Now, the attack has been condemned by people across the political divide. Republican John Dennis is running against Nancy Pelosi in the midterms. He said this was, quote, "an appalling act that deserves condemnation and contempt. No one has the right to violate another's property nor to initiate force on anyone else. The Pelosi's are neighbors," Mr. Dennis said. "My family and I wish a speedy recovery for Paul and swift justice for the assailant." The White House has also issued a statement saying the president is praying for Paul Pelosi and for Speaker Pelosi's whole family. President Biden apparently called Speaker Pelosi to express his support after what the White House called a horrible attack. And once again, Emily, in just about 30 minutes, we're due to hear from the San Francisco Police Department, and that will be very interesting to see if they can tell us what the motive was here. Was it just an opportunistic crime aimed at the Pelosi's property, or was it, more disturbingly, a politically motivated attack? And of course, we have seen several of those across the country in recent months, and in fact over the last couple of years. And everybody who's followed any politics will know that we live in perilous times, politically speaking, right now. Emily?
Jonathan, thank you so much for that excellent reporting. We will stay tuned for that presser, digging deeper into that motive. Tomi, Jonathan laid the table so perfectly for us, and he really sort of laid out that binary situation developing right there in San Francisco, which is, first of all, the Pelosi's home have been targeted in the past by political graffiti and a number of protests. Their address is public. On the other hand, right now, these are statistics of today, San Francisco has a crime index of 4. That means it is safer than just 4% of the rest of the cities in the country. The chances of you being a victim of a violent crime there in that city is 1 in 178. And the chances of you being a victim of a property crime there, 1 in 20 2. So in terms of the possibilities laid out there for either being a political crime victim or just simply a victim of that skyrocketing crime, it seems unfortunately like the chances were really high to begin with.
Well, first of all, obviously, this is horrific. No matter what your politics are, no matter how you feel about the Pelosi family, anybody that's attacked, especially an elderly man in their home, horrific. And I think everybody would be smart to first condemn anything like that would happen. But I think you're right. It would be hard to believe that this wasn't somehow motivated by it being a Pelosi, because, like you said, their address is public. People know where they live. But you also highlighted what average everyday Americans feel that don't have the Capitol Police, that don't have the resources that the Pelosi family would have when something like this happens. Everyday people in San Francisco and major cities across the U.S. are in this culture of lawlessness where criminals, thugs, felons feel so emboldened to go and do something like this. The home invasions, the burglaries. I mean, it happens all the time in Hollywood. People that are routinely talking about defunding the police until it happens to them. It's a stark reality we have to face.
That's right. And Jake, to her point, condemning all violence absolutely and unequivocally, which is why I think, I posture that it's sometimes difficult to stomach the sometimes selective condemnation coming out of the White House. Rightly so, the president condemned this attack and called the speaker and inquired after Paul's stability, expressing all of their, rightly so again, condemnation and support. I don't remember them doing that when we watched an elderly Asian American get stomped in the face multiple times, or attacks with hammers here in the city that have affected thousands of Americans that are victims to these skyrocketing crimes. Or if we're going the political route, the Marco Rubio volunteer that was just hospitalized, blood all over his face. I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember the White House condemning that.
No, we're in a new era in American politics, unfortunately. I think it all started in 2017, the congressional baseball game shooting. And in that incident, I was in D.C. at the time, it was very silent coming from the left. The Democrats really did not swiftly condemn that act. That guy was a Bernie Sanders campaign supporter. And I think that really kicked off this new era of violence against politicians and their families. We're seeing this right now. We've seen it in Philadelphia. We've seen it here in New York City. And we're seeing it right now in San Francisco. But you're right about these left-wing policies. The DA in San Francisco, the chief prosecutor in that city, he is the son of a Weather Underground terrorist who was convicted of murder. So, it's a new era in politics. It's unfortunate to see this. I want to see a swift condemnation from the Democrats.
And underscoring again, Amy, we do not know the motivation for this. We don't know whether it is political or, in fact, just a random crime. But that being said, as we see and track the skyrocketing crime across the nation, it seems to be this pattern where crime is skyrocketing in these Democrat-led cities while tourism is plummeting and the population is fleeing as well. So those who are left behind, often the vulnerable, the elderly, the underprivileged, seem to be getting the brunt of these crimes. And there is that overlay, right? There was a shooting in front of Lee Zeldin's home while his twin daughters were home recently. So regardless whether you're a politician or not, again, motive not known yet, it seems to be affecting literally all Americans.
I mean, here in New York City, it's scary. You're opening the news. Well, you don't even have to open it up. It's on the front cover that we're having subway attacks over and over again. And it's people who are innocent that are being attacked. And then, unfortunately, you have the governor of New York kind of shrugging her shoulders and saying, you guys are getting too worried about things. Finally, it looks like they might take some more actions to get more police into the subways. But it's something that, as a New Yorker, having my kids in the subway right now, really not an option. If they are, we all are supervised, and it's heads up, and it's really a serious step just to get to one place to the other. So if you talk about a vulnerable person, then they may not be leaving their homes because they're worried about crime in New York City. That is a crazy spot to be at.
Yeah, and not everyone in their homes is safe, as Paul Pelosi's situation has now demonstrated, frighteningly. And Jackie, I wonder, is it too late? Is the climate of violence, politically motivated or otherwise, again, we don't know in this particular situation, is it too far to go back? Have the elected officials not done a good enough job of not only condemning violence across the board, but also turning down the temperature rather than sort of increasing rhetoric all across the board that maybe has people sort of riled up and taking things into their own hands, those sort of unfettered criminals and otherwise?
I think that's a great question. And again, we're waiting to find out what the motivation was. But there are two things that we could have on our hands here. You know, a crime situation that just happened more randomly or with some motivation, but wasn't really targeted at the Pelosi's per se. That shines a light on what's happening not only in San Francisco, but all these other cities. If we have a situation where this is politically motivated, you have to step back and say, why is our country so divided? President Biden, you got up to the podium and said you were going to bring us together. And that was one of the things you promised people. It's one of the reasons they voted from you and they backed away from Trump, because they did think that he was divisive. So why is this happening and why are we so polarized? It's a huge question right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So much more to cover and to learn. We will continue to monitor this story. Of course, our best with Paul Pelosi for a full and speedy recovery. And we will bring you that San Francisco Police Department presser as soon as it's happening. Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.